What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator Lesly Julien. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? How's it going?
Man, it is going well. I'm excited to have you on. You are part of a team. You are in the midst of a Kickstarter right now that's going on, and we're going to jump into that in just a little bit. But I always like to ask my guests, well, the first things I ask when they come on is, have you always been a fan of comics? Were you a kid, as a kid, did you get into comics? Like, where are you at with your fandom of comics, and how'd you get into comics?
It kind of started later for me, although I would say I was kind of like making comics as a kid, but I just didn't really have a lot on hand. My parents just didn't buy a ton of comics, so I think I had a random like Archie Ninja Turtles comic because I loved Ninja Turtles, and I had like a random X Factor comic. And like I said, I made a lot of my own stuff because I couldn't get my hands on a lot of stuff. So I was kind of making like imitation X-Men stuff, and the first comic I ever made was a Godzilla versus King Kong comic, like in first grade or something like that. So I've always kind of liked making them, even if I didn't read a ton. But I definitely did start reading a lot more comics in college. Basically, once I had a little bit more disposable income, I kind of fell in around the time Civil War was happening, and Runaways that really kind of pulled me in to really jump into comics. Definitely.
Nice. So my next question I always like to ask then is, how did you get into creating comics? And it sounds like you kind of had that passion at an early age. So how did you take, that kind of early, you said one of the first things you did was Godzilla versus King Kong kind of comic, which is awesome. And we need to see that at some point.
I wish I could find all this. All this stuff is gone, unfortunately. But yeah, so I when I was younger, definitely drew a lot more comics, but kind of as I got older, I kind of fell out of drawing and kind of switched more so towards writing. And then even then, I would say, by middle school, I was just more so like writing stuff. But I would say I had a long hiatus where I just wasn't creating anything for a while. So I was reading comics and kind of getting inspired by stuff, but still not necessarily doing my own thing. But I did start writing short stories again. And my girlfriend, who is my wife now, we were kind of like going back and forth writing short stories. And I had one that I just thought would make a cool comic, but I didn't know how to. And it's just like, why don't you just find out how? I'm like, I don't know. So I was like, oh, that's just something you can Google. So I had hopped on Google and kind of started to figure things out. I kind of hopped around from different creating forums like Pencil Jack and Digital Webbing. And I kind of slowly started working on my stuff. I made a one-page comic kind of based on one of my short stories, and then from there I started doing kind of some longer things. Went from like one pager to 2 pages, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 5, and then I had something that put out for SBX called Ghost Gauntlet, and then now here we are with the Kickstarter. So I've kind of slowly evolved from not knowing anything obviously to hopping on forums and meeting other creators and just kind of expanding my my worldview in terms of the world of comics and everything.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you kind of went from Ghost Gauntlet to now where you're at with this Kickstarter, which is Savage Wizards, which I'm excited to talk about and kind of get the people to know a little bit. But before we do that, I gotta say, my first exposure to you was in one of the anthologies that you contributed to. You had a story in Project Big Hype. And I know some of the other people on your team had some big involvement with this as well. But that anthology was who's who of writers. And like when you see your story just in the midst of stories of all of these like really well-known comic creators as yourself and all these other ones, like it's got to be a cool experience, I feel like.
Yeah, it was an amazingly cool experience to be a part of that, and to have my name alongside of people I respect so much, like David Post and like I said, Eric Pilecki and everything like that. I was just really humbled that Doug and the whole editorial team thought that my story should be a part of it, and me and Rachel, we kind of snuck in the only, I feel like, depressing story in there, but we had a lot of fun putting it together, and it was just a blast to finally have myself kind of on that stage for putting out like a self-published story and getting into an anthology like that. And a little bit after, I got into another anthology, the Off into the Sunset anthology, which should be coming out shortly.
Yeah, so because I have a buddy who had one in Project Big Hype and has one coming out and on in the sunset too. So that'll be
Awesome.
that'll be exciting to pick that up as well. Let's talk your Kickstarter then.
Okay.
Let's talk all we can about Savage Wizard.
Here we
Um,
go.
for people that haven't gotten to check out the Kickstarter yet, which is live right now as we're talking, but wait till we're done with the video. Then you can go click. There's still time after our interview's over. Then you can go click and support the Kickstarter. But if people haven't gotten to hear you guys talk about the book yet or checked out the Kickstarter, what is it about?
So the quick and dirty version I like to give people is basically, what if Conan the Barbarian was forced to become a magic user or forced to become a wizard? That's the story in a nutshell.
Ooh, so where did that idea come from? Like, where was that process of Conan the Barbarian as a magic user?
So I want to say it was back in 2019. I heard about this thing called Pitchvember, where writers, kind of similar to Drawtober, writers are supposed to come up with like a log line every day in the month of November. So I was putting out a bunch of like random ideas, and that was just one of them that I came up at that time. And Doug saw some of my stuff, and he approached me to kind of collaborate. He just wanted to see if we wanted to co-write something. And neither of us had co-written anything before, but we figured, hey, it'd be fun. Let's try this out. Worst thing that happens, we just don't do anything. We kind of went back and forth, and ideas weren't really sticking. But eventually, I kind of pulled this one kind of out of my pocket. I was like, oh yeah, like how about this idea about a barbarian that kind of has to reclass as a magic user? It's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Let's do that. And we kind of started building on it from there.
That's so cool. So it just one of those, like you said, like one of those November things where you put out just a different topic each day. I've seen it with different drawings and stuff. That's so cool to like. I love that pitch idea. So what was that process then like? As you just said, you both have never really co-written with someone. How was that? How was that process for you co-writing this story?
Yeah, so it's a lot different, like co-writing versus obviously collaborating with a writer. You kind of have those writer egos kind of clash, but actually this went pretty well. We were both really surprised how smoothly the process went. Pretty much what we did is we used something called a snowflake method, where you take that initial idea that had like that barbarian because the wizard thing, and you turn that into a paragraph. From there, you turn that paragraph into a page, and then you kind of build things out kind of based on the character, like every single character's perspective. And it's more so of a novel writing process, but we tweaked it and kind of used it for writing this comic, just because we had never written anything together, so we felt like we needed something a little bit more structured. And so once we had that going, we outlined the story, and then we kind of broke it down into scenes. And once we had our scenes, basically what we did is we would get our scenes. And so Doug would write the first 3 pages, I would write the next 3, and then we would bring them together, see what we wrote, compare notes, and basically just make sure that they were consistent and the feeling and everything like that. And once we felt like they were good, like, okay, we approve them, and then kind of on to the next couple of scenes and keep going like that until we got to the end of the book. And I think it felt pretty seamless. If Brian was here, he said he had our artist, Brian Flint, he said he never really noticed a difference in the pages. So clearly we did something right.
Nice. Well, because it's always such an interesting process. And I love to hear that kind of behind the scenes of like writers and artists are used to having to collaborate together of like, oh, here's what I want, draw this, or, draw. But like for the writers to come together and like have to like to see that process work out, it's a cool thing to just kind of see how it goes. So
yeah.
So why Kickstarter then? Is this your first Kickstarter?
This is my first Kickstarter. Doug has done 2. He did Project Big Hype. He put that together, which is, again, awesome. Right. He did that. And he also did the Ultramax trade paperback that he put together as well. So Doug has had a bit more Kickstarter experience, but it's my first. Initially, when we came up with the idea, we were thinking of pitching it. But pretty much, things were happening. Doug had to deal with a publisher we don't want to talk about. And, the pandemic happened. So it's a lot of, crazy things happen where we just kind of shifted perspective. And like, we were tired of, just having to wait around for things. You say, you know what? The fastest way to get this book done is going to Kickstarter.
I'm starting to see that trend a little bit more and more with creators of, hey, I have that freedom to do what I want to do, to have my team we get to put it out when we want to. And there's a market for comics in Kickstarter. Like, it's interesting because it feels like there's really two distinct markets of people really like either you are a comic collector on Kickstarter or you're not. But
Right.
but
That's true.
It's a
Yeah, it's
slippery
like a whole
slope.
separate market. It is a slippery slope, but yeah, it's funny. Like some people kind of joke that Kickstarter is like another publisher now. Like it's just become such a great avenue for indie creators and also larger creators to put their stuff out and kind of get away from some of the red tape that unfortunately can get in the way when you're
Right.
making comics.
Well, and I like there's a lot of interaction I think with the fans and the creators as well, because Kickstarters live and breathe off of fans supporting it.
Yep.
Like it needs to hit so and so to get made or whatever. So like there has to be that interaction, and it gives it a nice like more of a community. But man, yeah, Kickstarters are a slippery slope because I'm like, I'll support this one, I'll support this, and then I completely forget when they come. When they drop
yeah, it's either that like, oh, surprise, like I totally forgot I backed that, or you're going through the month of September and then you get your credit card bill up. It's like I spent that much. Like, how is that possible?
I'm like, oh yeah, we're fine. Like we're budgeting fine, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh snap, the Kickstarter I supported a month ago dropped. I completely forgot about that because that's easy for me to do. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll support it. I don't need to pay
that's next month's bearded problem, right? I know. Like,
it's a dangerous game, but it's so worth it because I feel like the projects that you get on Kickstarter, there's such a passion behind it, I think, and just in the little bit that I've gotten to check out of Savage Wizard, like I can't wait. I'm so captivated by it. I think it's going to be just the art looks fantastic, and like your story pitch has already been great. So how was that getting the art to kind of sync up with like your visions, yours and Doug's vision for the book? Like, did you guys kind of like, hey, this is where we want to take it? Or when you gave the stuff to Brian, it was just kind of like, this is our story. What you got?
So, yeah, I think initially, like once we finished the script, we weren't entirely sure. Like we had a couple different directions, definitely could have gone in, but pretty much, Brian was someone I kind of remembered. We were both kind of way back in the day. We were part of this online group called the Comic Jam, which would pair artists and writers together, and they would have like a week to put together like a one-page comic based on like random prompt. So we were both in it, but we kind of never got the chance to collaborate. But I just even remember even back then, like just being in love with Brian's art. So kind of flash forward to now, I'm like, okay, like who can kind of draw the style of like action, like a bunch of like half naked guys running around. And Brian actually had something fairly similar that he did a couple years back called Kuru. It's like totally very different because it's about these crazy vampire monkeys chasing around Neanderthals. But like visually, there's a little bit of parallel. So once Brian got on board, I mean, I knew it was going to look good, but yeah, like still, like Brian just took it to another level. And every time we show this off, I feel like, people's jaws drop, like, wow, like this is amazing. Like, this is pro level. Like Brian is just like an incredible part to have a part of the team. Like his art is stellar. And his style, I think, feels like so distinct. Like, I love it. And clearly other people do too.
Yeah, it's great. So, well, one of the things that I personally love about Kickstarter are how they have different tiers. And I really like about your guys' tiers, you just have them listed as like different levels of like, I feel like I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
everyone's had some fun with it.
You're a savage, you're a wizard. So out of all the tiers, because you have your basic tier like that people can just hop in on, get the digital, or the very next lower tier getting the physical copy. What are some tiers though that you are excited about with this Kickstarter, or that like you're like, oh, this is a really cool one that I think people should check out?
I mean, there's so many, so people say like I'm kind of cheating, but of course, the first one I would say is Brian's. I guess we call it the Stoneheart tier, where basically you can get drawn into the book. That's $100 tier, and you basically get drawn into the book, and Brian will more likely than not murder you in some kind of crazy way. I think there's one left right now, so we'll see if that's still around. But yeah, that is a really awesome tier that we're super excited about. And also, pretty
Well, I have to pause you.
recently.
I have to pause
No,
you
you're good.
because I know you were just on my homie's channel a couple weeks ago, the Comic Burritos. Now,
Mhm.
how often do you get asked then when you tell about that tier of like, hey, can we pay Brian to murder someone else in the book? Like, because I know, like, I really would like to have Todd and just be written into that book.
Right. That hasn't happened yet.
So
For
you're
you, we can make
saying
an
there is a
exception.
chance?
Yeah, there's a chance.
I love you, Todd. Oh, but okay, go ahead. What else? What were
No,
some?
you're good. And so also just recently, I'm not sure if how recently you checked out the page, but we just added 2 variant cover tiers, and we weren't planning on these, but these have been awesome surprises. So there's the Centerman variant cover, which is just absolutely phenomenal. Looks like a fine art painting. You got a barbarian there about to hack off the head of this kind of demon, a monkey dude, and it just looks badass. And also we got Maria Wolf, who you might know from Women of Marvel cover and Marvel Voices.
Yep.
She just put out a ridiculously insane and detailed cover that we just absolutely love, with this orc about to chomp on our main character Renar, and you have a Scum also in the front there trying to do some damage. So those 2 covers, I mean, even our main cover I'm also in love with, but we just added these 2, and I think people are just really going to love those as well, to kind of have some little variety of spice of life.
That's right. It's a spice of life for sure. So, gang, what's cool about Kickstarters is if you've already backed this and you're watching this, you can always change it if you're like, "Ooh, I didn't know about those variants."
Exactly.
And it's like I said, the Kickstarter is live right now, so wait until the video's over, but then go support it. So let's talk though a little bit more about Savage Wizard.
Yeah.
Do you guys envision this? Is this kind of a one and done thing? Or do you have kind of like a world that you're expanding on with it, or?
So we definitely plan this as like a mini series. We have like a contained 4-issue mini series, that story that we want to tell. But there definitely is room to kind of revisit it and do more with it if this goes well. We definitely think there is room to tell some more with these characters, because we like them a lot. So it'd be cool to do some more with them.
So you at least right now this is issue 1. You have plans for at least 3 more issues coming up to have a complete arc, and then seeing how that goes, how much more you dig into the world of Savage Wizard.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So what else are you working on? Is this kind of your main focus right now? Are there other things that you can kind of hint at?
So besides this, I am also I have another thing, and I'll probably go to Kickstarter next year, more likely than not. It's called Head Cases. I also co-wrote that one with AJ O. Mason, who's a great writer who actually just signed to IDW Originals for a graphic novel he did called Cloud9. So I co-wrote it with him, and also the artist on that is Paulo Sampiao, who's a fantastic artist. And so that's like a kind of crazy crime comedy we did that it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, more likely than not, probably be on Kickstarter probably middle of next year. In addition to that, I kind of have like a graphic novel, but I have been working on. It's kind of set in a futuristic society, just on a different planet, where there is a princess, and she basically is forced to reckon with this coming democratic change that's coming to her world. So she is kind of butting heads with this young activist that is kind of a thorn in her side. So there's some interest there. So we'll see how that goes. But for the most part, Savage Wizard and Head Cases, I'm super excited with, and some other coals in the fire. But those are the 2 main things that are happening right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, since I have you, I have to ask you, why did you write such a depressing story?
Thanks for asking. So it's funny, when me and Rachel first linked up, she immediately asked, like, "Hey, like, you want to do something that's like kind of Akira influence, like, and like it is like a little bit of Final Fantasy influence in there also." But I was like, okay, like Akira influence, I can work with that. And I mean, immediately when I think of Akira, I mean, yeah, the motorcycles are cool, but I mean, that's a pretty depressing story, you know. So that's kind of where my mind went once we started developing things, and I had a lot of fun, and I kind of feel bad what I did to those characters because I love them so much. Like, but yeah, like that story was darker than I intended for this Shonen Jump anthology, which is Doug was like, no, right, lots of fun stuff. I'm like, sorry, here's my story.
That's so fun. Like just a, because it is. That's what I love about anthologies is they're quick hit stories, but you get such a wide variety of a creator's voices and what inspires them. And and you said you have one coming out in Off Into the Sunset, which is that's going to be a Kickstarter soon, correct?
So actually, they got kickstarted, they funded successfully. We're just waiting to get that to the printer. I think there's like one
so
or
it's
two more
already been.
stories.
So it's already been a Kickstarter.
Yep.
It's already okay. Then I've already funded it. I was like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about when I say
exactly.
Kickstarter. I'm forgetting. So I'm excited to read that story in there because I know I've already supported that.
Yeah, me and Alex Schlitz, we came up with a fun little 5-page story that I think I did a great job with. It was just really fun working with her and her art style. I kind of had her get a little bit of her element a little bit because usually she's not drawing crusty old guys like I made her draw. But I think we had a lot of fun with that story, and she did a fantastic job. And also AJ, who lettered that, also did a phenomenal job lettering that as well. And speaking of Big Hype, also, I totally just realized that the second volume is being worked on right now. And
nice.
So I got a story in this one also, and I'm super excited about it. It's totally opposite from Terminus. So a lot less depressing. A lot more, kind of shonen influenced, and I think it's a lot closer to like the stuff like you might be used to in terms of like what am I thinking of right now? Why is it blinking? Stuff like Full Metal Alchemist or stuff like My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
It's more in terms of that than Akira, and super depressing.
Nice. So do you have like kind of where does your writing style come from? Like, do you have like what influences your style?
So I would say big influences on Brian K. Vaughan. Like I said, I mentioned Runaways earlier, but Runaways and Why the Last Man were stuff that really got my creative gears turning and wanted me to start writing and just making my own stories again. Also probably just all the movies and TV shows I shouldn't have been watching as a kid. A lot of that stuff, and really just life, and I don't know, like wherever writer ideas come up from, I just pull them out of the sky and they pop into my head in the middle of the night, and I try to jot them down as quickly as possible. But honestly, just all over stuff I see in the news. It just really comes from all over, honestly.
Yeah, well, that's always cool to kind of just see where people piece things together and how it comes about. So, well, Lesly, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So, I've asked you what you got going on. How can people stay connected with you? Like, what's the best way for them to follow what you're doing? Because you have a lot of things happening, it sounds like. So,
yeah, best way you can keep in touch is check me out on Twitter. I'm twitter.com at LesWrite. That's LESWRITE, or you can find me on my website, LESWRITE.com. So LesWrite.com. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. And gang, all the links, the social media stuff, the website, the link for the Kickstarter is in the description of this video. Click those, go support. Kickstarters they're so important to, I just think, everyone always talks about the first 2 days are crucial for a Kickstarter. Well, the tail end still is just as crucial because it's that kind of push to get there. And we're on the tail end here of Savage Wizard, and we need to make sure that we're getting that last push in. So gang, if you're on the fence, you're dipping your toes in, I don't know why you're on the fence, because this interview should have sealed the deal for you.
Yeah, definitely check out the trailer. If that doesn't convince you, then I don't know, I can't do much else.
Then, I mean, you're up a creek. Sorry, gang. Well, with that being said, hopefully y'all can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.